Dare not to go on.
I stand to lose everything.
Grantchester on Masterpiece Mystery.
Sunday night at 9 on MPT.
Start your journey to success at Salisbury University. Located on Maryland's Eastern Shore, SU offers over 120 majors and minors spanning business, education, health, the arts, and science. Students have opportunities for internships and research. Learn more at salisbury.edu.
Since 2014, the Maryland Energy Administration Solar Canopy Grant has added over 20,000 kilowatts of solar generation to the state, which is enough energy to power over 2,100 Maryland homes. Learn more at energy.maryland.gov.
The University of Maryland, Baltimore's Cure Scholars Program empowers students in Baltimore's underserved and vulnerable communities in STEM education. Learn more at umaryland.edu/cure-scholars.
Gifts to the MPT Foundation Endowment provide essential funding for our projects and programs. We thank the E.T. and Robert B. Rockland Fund for its generous support, benefiting all of our diverse communities for years to come.
State Circle is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
Connecting Marylanders to their government. This is State Circle.
Good evening and welcome to State Circle. Coming up tonight, why the five-star competition was a leap forward for Maryland's horse industry. And Charles Robinson reports on Hispanic Heritage Month. But first tonight, a big week in Maryland political news. Retirement announcements from two statewide officials. Also, the first commission-designed congressional map. Could it change your representative in Congress? Our roundtable guests this week are Pamela Wood of the Baltimore Sun and Brian Sears of the Daily Record. Pam, if I can begin with you, you were in attendance last night, had a valuable ticket for the CNN town hall with President Biden. What were the big takeaways from that?
Yes, this was President Biden's first visit to Baltimore officially since he became president. It was a very friendly crowd for the president. They just showered him with applause. He came out with a big grin. He seemed very excited to be here. Now, while he was in Baltimore, he didn't really talk about very much directly related to Baltimore. This was focused a lot on his agenda, his efforts to get his policies through Congress, a lot of them which are struggling, the infrastructure spending bill that would support, projects across the country. He spoke about that. He was questioned by local folks on everything ranging from immigration policy to tax policy, even gas prices, and when we could expect to see coronavirus vaccines for younger children. So it was really kind of all over the map. And one thing I found was interesting, the people who were chosen to ask questions of the president were drawn, a lot of them from local universities. So we had some students, some staff from Loyola, University of Maryland downtown, and Morgan State in particular seemed to get the biggest support from the crowd. People were very happy to see Morgan folks asking questions of the president.
Brian, let's turn to Maryland politics. You broke the story this week that Attorney General Brian Frosh is going to retire, will not seek re-election next year. Maybe a little bit surprising. I mean, he's retirement age, but he's somebody who really seemed to love being the Attorney General.
He really did, and he's a guy that is by all accounts a very thoughtful person who cares about the law. I think that it had been rumored for a while. There was a lot of discussion about the Attorney General considering retiring. There was also at one point an idea floated that the Attorney General might simply run for re-election, but not sort of do the traditional campaigning that we see, and just sort of run on the I'm Brian Frosh and you know me, I've been here for 8 years, and see how that goes. And there were some Democrats who expressed to me that they were interested in seeing that kind of a race and thought that Brian Frosh could win. But I think in the end, he really was sort of pulled to retire. It did in a lot of ways surprise some people because, as Kathleen Dumais, for example, a delegate from Montgomery County, said to me, she really believed that Brian Frosh in the end was going to run again for re-election.
So that opens up all of the statewide elected offices. The comptroller, Peter Franchot, is running for governor. The governor's term limited, and now you have an attractive position. What's the early talk on who might seek that position?
I think the very early talk is Anthony Brown, congressman from Prince George's County, former lieutenant governor, but also Will Smith, who is a senator from Montgomery County and the chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee. They're the two early favorites. There's been some other, we have a Republican who's already in. That's a fairly tough poll for Republicans in Maryland. There's been some talk about some other candidates here and there. One of the interesting things is very few, especially on the Democratic side, very few women's names being mentioned, which is to me fairly interesting, because there are women like Kathleen Dumais, like Vanessa Atterbury, like Aisha Braveboy in Prince George's County, who on paper are qualified for this job, and we're not really talking about them, and we're not really seeing those kinds of candidates being recruited.
I wonder, Pam, feel free to jump in, if it's going to be the sort of race where all the oxygen in the room is going to be taken up by the governor's race. It's going to be hard to get people to focus on it.
Yeah, there really is a huge governor's race. We've had 2 terms of Governor Larry Hogan, and by my count, we're up to approximately a dozen candidates actually trying to win. Then we have the comptroller's race, where there's a competitive Democratic primary with Delegate Brooke Learman and Bowie Mayor Tim Adams. There's also a credible Republican in that race in Barry Glassman, the Harford County executive. And now suddenly we have the Attorney General's race. So that's a lot for voters to take in an election year, all these races. And now these potential candidates have until February 22nd to decide whether they're going to get in or not, and make all those calculations. So we'll be seeing that play out in the coming weeks.
The other retirement news this week, Nancy Kopp, the longtime state treasurer, resigning that position. It's a little bit different because it's not elected by the public. It's selected by the state legislature. And that's a political plum as well.
Yeah, that also, so 2 big retirements this week. Treasurer Kopp, much like Attorney General Frosch, in her 70s, there had been some speculation of when she might step down. She's going to step down by the end of the year. And so it's up to the state legislature to replace her. They hold an election in a special session of the House of Delegates at the state Senate. And we could see that happen in December. That's because the General Assembly is expected to come in for a special session to deal with redistricting maps, since we just had a census. So there could be quite a lot of excitement in Annapolis in December.
We will hear more from Nancy Kopp in a few minutes on this program. So that brings us to the special session coming up in early December. We understand this will focus 2 redistricting tasks for the legislature. One is redrawing their own districts, and there's a constitutional process for that starts in January. But the special session would focus on the congressional map. There are 2 commissions drawing maps, one from the legislature, one appointed by the governor. The governor's commission has released, I believe, their final map, which we can put up, and looks, you can say this, it has fewer crazy lines than the current congressional map.
Yeah, it certainly is less gerrymandered. The current map drawn by Democrats is considered one of the most gerrymandered in the nation, gerrymandering being drawing lines for political advantage. And most Marylanders, I would wager, don't even know what district they're in. This map proposed by Hogan's commission certainly does look to the eyeball to make a lot more sense. It's probably not going to get traction in the General Assembly, which is who makes the final decision on the maps.
And the process there, Brian, is that it's very different for legislative redistricting, but for congressional, it's just like any other piece of legislation. The legislature approves it, the governor can veto it, the legislature can override that, subject to a filibuster. I don't know if you can quite declare the governor's commission map dead on arrival, but certainly whatever map the legislature's commission comes up with would have the inside track. So
I think you can discount the governor's map a little bit. It's going to be an interesting talking point, and it will certainly be used during debates. But primarily, the congressional redistricting is done by the General Assembly. The legislative redistricting, the governor is required to submit a map, but then it falls into the General Assembly's hands, and they can pretty much do at that point what they want. But in this case, with congressional redistricting, the governor has less of a role. So this will make for a great talking point. It will certainly go to show what Larry Hogan has been talking about for much of the last 6 or 7 years, which is that redistricting is a problem in Maryland. And this gives everybody an idea of what his version of an independent committee drawing maps would look like. I think Republicans are probably going to wave this map around a lot during the debates. But in the end, the Democratic majority is going to draw these maps.
I guess the question is, of course, we have 8 members of the House of Representatives, currently 7 Democrats. I guess the tactical question is, how crazy does the map have to look to maintain that margin? And how many, I don't know the answer to this, but the governor's map would at least elect a second Republican. I don't know about a third.
My read of it is it's probably a 6-2 map, 6 Democrats, 2 Republicans. That's what the website 538 analysis said as well. Another one looks like it could be a little bit of a toss-up that includes much of Anne Arundel and Howard counties. But Democrats can do another 7-1 map. There's talk about maybe they try for an 8-0 map, which might take some serious geographic contortions, but it could be possible.
Before we go, let's talk about the news from Western Maryland. And this would affect the congressional map and the legislative map, where a number of legislators representing Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington counties, the state's 3 westernmost counties, I think sent a letter, correct me if I'm wrong, to the state of West Virginia asking to join West Virginia?
Yeah, and Jeff, this is, this comes up from time to time. I mean, it has not been that long ago. I would say probably at least once in the last 10 years, we have had these conversations about Western Maryland wanting to secede from Maryland. There's always a conversation about, the costs of that. This really is in the end, again, probably more of a talking point, more of a protest move. The idea that people in Western Maryland frequently feel disconnected from what a friend of mine referred to as downstate. So in the end, I think this is probably more of a talking point. But as I was joking with a colleague of mine, it'll be pretty interesting in January when the Western Maryland delegation comes to Annapolis and they want some money for a capital project and have to ask the Maryland General Assembly for that after seeking to join West Virginia.
Now State Circle's Nancy Yamada spoke with retiring Treasurer Nancy Kopp.
You've been in public service for nearly 5 decades, which is really quite remarkable. When you took the state treasurer job in 2002, when you were elected, did you expect that you'd stay on the job for almost 20 years? And why did you decide that it's time to retire?
Well, no, I did not expect I would stay on that long, although I had been in the General Assembly for 27 years. So I don't hop from place to place easily or often, but I thought this was a good time, Nancy, because first of all, it has been 50 years since I started out as staff of the General Assembly and 20 years as treasurer. And I do believe in smooth transitions. I actually was elected after only about a 10-day campaign in 2002 when my predecessor, Richard Dixon, decided that he had to retire for health reasons in the middle of a legislative session. And I thought that was really very, very unfortunate. And I want to smooth the way. That was one reason. And I really do believe in generational change, even though I may not look as though I do. And I think it also is a good time because Maryland's in good shape now. We've gone through a transition in legislative leadership with the passing of our former speaker and late Senate president. We are in good shape financially. The state pension system, which I chair, is in quite good shape. And I thought it was just a fine time for a transition.
The state really is in an amazing position right now with a $2 billion surplus. How do you think this money should be allocated? Should it go in the state retirement, the pension fund, go into the rainy day fund? What are your thoughts on that?
One word response is carefully. It should be allocated by the governor and General Assembly very carefully. We are in delicate times and we don't know what's coming down the road. So I certainly wouldn't spend it all or spend it on recurring expenses. But on the other hand, the state has a lot of needs, Nancy. Our infrastructure is not what it should be. And we do have to put funding into the roads, the bridges, the pipes, preparing for climate change, all of these things which are one-time expenditures instead of building things in. And on the other hand, we have, I believe, an underpaid workforce, state workforce. We pay less than the surrounding counties, than the federal government, than the private sector, and yet we expect a great job, great service from our state employees, and we get it. But I think we have to look at that physical and social infrastructure of the state while keeping funds aside for a rainy day.
In the last 2 decades, certainly the state has weathered its fair share of fiscal storms. In your mind, what have been the biggest challenges and what are your proudest accomplishments?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is to keep going and to make our educational system what we need, both elementary, secondary, and higher ed, so we continue to have the strong, good, flexible workforce, which has brought us a AAA bond rating. I think that's the basis of our good, strong bond rating. And that bond rating is a signal to the world that the people who examine our books and examine our fiscal posture think that we are strong. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm also proud of the fact that I spent a great deal of time in the General Assembly on, well, a number of things, but one was trying to raise the posture of women in state government, the profile of state women, and I think we have made very significant progress. And the other was education, school construction, and our university. And we reorganized the university into one university system of Maryland with the flagship campus and Morgan State University as the urban campus for the state. And they have, I think, since that reorganization, just bloomed into significant worldwide known institutions and great research and teaching institutions. And I think that's terribly important.
In coming weeks, the General Assembly will be reviewing candidates for the next state treasurer. What advice would you have for this person?
I think do your best to understand the job as you come into it. It's a very difficult thing to do, task, because there's so many different aspects of the job, ranging from the Climate Change Commission to capital debt affordability, to the bond market, to investment. And look at yourself and make sure that this is what you really feel you have a calling to do. And if you do, then God bless you.
And my final question is, what lies ahead for you? What do you plan on doing?
There's so much. I must say, one thing is that I've been able to do what I have for the past 50 years because of great support from my husband and my family and the local community. And I want to spend a little time while I'm well and eager still with them, and allow us to have a little time, private time together. But the other thing is, I hope I will remain active in the community. I have not lost any of my interest or my commitment, or what I feel is a recognition of a mission we all have in different walks of life and different roles to help repair the world, to help make the community better for everyone. And that mission always continues.
Treasurer Kopp, thank you for your long dedicated service to our state, and thank you for your time.
Nancy, thank you. Now the big gathering of people and horses in Cecil County in Northeast Maryland has come to an end. The inaugural Maryland 5-Star was held at the newly constructed Fair Hill Special Event Zone. We spoke with Maryland Department of Commerce Assistant Secretary Tom Riford.
The economic impact of this wonderful event, one of only two that are being held in America, it's just unbelievable. The first year, the total estimated economic impact is around $11 million, which sure isn't bad for a weekend event. And of course, international attention. The event was broadcast all over the world. You can see news stories online about this event in England and in Asia, everywhere. It's unbelievable, and it sure brings a lot of positive attention to the state of Maryland, and you can't buy that kind of publicity. So there's that economic impact that you can't really put your arms around, but that kind of publicity surely is important. And when you look at, in the first year, about $11 million of economic impact, what does that mean? Well, that's the money that visitors are spending that flows through the economy. They're filling up hotels, throughout the entire Baltimore region. There were people staying in Annapolis that were having to drive up, and also over in Delaware, because the actual Fair Hill facility is right there by the Delaware border. Every hotel room in Cecil County was basically filled.
And
really,
Tom, this wasn't, I'm sorry, this was not a one-time event, right?
Well, it's going to be an annual event. Next year, they anticipate it's about a $30 million impact as this grows. And the amount of investment that the organizers have put into this event, both public and private, I mean, that just shows a great collaboration of a lot of different pockets and a lot of different talent that pulled this together. And by the way, hats off to Maryland Public Television for really helping tell the story of 5-Star and all the great things that world-class equestrian event has brought to our state. And I want to say something about the economic impact of this, because it does help provide jobs. The money that flows through our economy keeps people employed, and those visitors who come and spend money here, we don't have to build them new schools or a new sewer plant, that kind of thing. They come here, they spend money, and they go home with wonderful memories of how great the state of Maryland is.
You told me that October is Horse Month, which I did not know. And I'll admit to being from what I think is the majority of Marylanders who, when we think about horses in competition, we think about Pimlico and Laurel and horses running in circles around a track, not equestrian. But when you think about the size of the horse breeding and training and all the related agriculture, equestrian's a part of it.
Oh, absolutely. It is, yes, an agricultural per se activity, but it's also recreational. It is sporting. It is tourism. There's a lot of different niches that you can classify the Maryland horse industry. And when you look at the total economic impact, there's 28,000 people in Maryland that work in the horse industry. There are more horses per capita in Maryland than most every other state in the country, and a lot of money flowing through the economy because of the horse industry. And you're right, it's not just horse racing. It's recreational. It's all of the different activities that involve the equestrian pursuit. About $1 billion a year is spent by the participants of Maryland's horse industry. And in addition to that, we have about $78 million that's raised in local and state taxes by the horse industry. So it is an important industry.
Tom, I'm sorry, I was going to ask to broaden it out. I just have half a minute. But when you put it in the context of sports overall.
Sports overall, very, very important to the Maryland economy. And it's a lot of different classifications, youth sports, amateur sports, professional sports. you're looking at annually over $205 million in direct spending just in youth and amateur sports in this state. And when you add into the equation college and semi-pro and pro sports, it brings an additional $1 billion of spending here in our state.
Tom Riford is Assistant Secretary of the State Commerce Department. Mr. Riford, we appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
And now Charles Robinson had a chance to sit down with a cross-section of Marylanders during the just concluded National Hispanic Heritage Month.
What it means to be Hispanic and Latina, it means to be powerful, capaz, capable, resilient, and strong. Because for me, and for my family, we've had to go beyond every obstacle.
Family is an important aspect of Hispanic culture and life. Umanya says she had her feet in two worlds. She was born in Montgomery County, but her parents are from El Salvador. It's an experience not uncommon in various parts of the state. The recent United States Census shows Maryland is a majority minority state. Latinos is one of the fastest growing minorities. From the outside, it may seem they're all the same. In reality, they come from different countries with different life experiences.
Here is my life now, but I teach every day my family, okay, you are from El Salvador, this is your culture, this is your sus raíces, and we need to be feliz, happy, all, en cualquier lugar. En cualquier lugar que tú estés, tú tienes que sentirte orgullosa de lo que tú eres.
That you have to be proud regardless.
Yes.
I'm so glad that I've been in this journey, that even though I may have a different story from most of the immigrants that came to the country looking for something, I was looking for myself.
What do you think people get wrong about this community?
All too often the Latino is typecast, and people don't know what to do with a Latino that doesn't fit their mold, and there are a lot of Latinos that don't fit that caricature.
There is a unique diversity in this group, but a common thread that runs through the American experience: family. In Silver Spring, I'm Charles Robinson.
Charles, thank you, and thank you for joining us for State Circle. Have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.
CCBC Continuing Education, customized training. Whether you're a business, nonprofit, or government agency, look to CCBC for all your training needs. 443-840-5200. The Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled serves Maryland